Just having another go to see if I can show the growth rings on this walnut. See that line there? Oh yeah, it turns around there. Tricky to, oh that's better, very tricky to on a video thing if you haven't got a pale background there. That shows how there's a couple of lines where the growth ring goes along the bow. A couple of tiny little pin knots there. There, and you can see it shows along there as well. I've been tidying up the bow, mostly just for something to do. But, this shows how it's slightly asymmetric in the grip. Leaving a bit more room on the arrow side of the bow than the other side. I've smoothed and rounded. I've got the nocks shaped up a bit better and I've made them narrower. As I've been talking about fiddling and fettling, I can talk about nocks. See, the common mistake people make with nocks is they forget that the string sits like that, even maybe like that at brace, but as the bow's drawn the string swings back at an angle like that, so the string's got to sit in the groove nicely at all these angles. So anyone who saws a deep groove in at a fixed angle like that is just going to create a corner where the string's going to end up chafing and flexing too much over a fixed point and is likely to break. The other thing is you can narrow it substantially. You don't need the limbs to carry on wide and then go into a shoulder, because that doesn't, it's just a total waste of wood really. So if you have the tip of the bow like that, that's exaggerated. But yeah, that might be traditional for certain types of bow, and if that's what you want, fine. But of course the string force is pulling down here, so A, you're likely to get a split in the wood, but B, all this wood is effectively just wasted. It's just wasted weight. Can't do it with one hand and hold the camera. If you've got a shoulder like that, this is looking from the side, of course the string's going to be bending sharply over this edge, so you have to round that considerably to allow the string to pivot between full draw position and braced position. Now if you want them like that, fine, but the other one is, of course, you can have it like that, which is sort of pretty silly really, because this end bit invariably gets split off. And so anyhow, much nicer to just taper it and just have the groove in an overlay on the back of the bow, because then the string's much freer to move up and down, you know, the side of the bow as the bow's drawn. Anyhow, I'm rabbiting on just for the hell of something, just to give me something to video. Oh, that's interesting, this funny little like a three-sided pin knot, if you like. A bit like a face, a bit like a sloth, like a miserable sloth. Oh, I'm not a very happy bow. Oh, nobody loves me. Yes, strange. Faces in bows. Who'd have thought it? That's funny, that camera's focusing quite nice and close now. Anyway, there you go. There's a couple more of those funny little marks in the walnut. But I think the beauty of it is because the rings are so thick, you know, you can get away with murder. That doesn't show through on the other side. Oh, there you go. There's the saw marks on the belly where that weak spot is. You can just see a bit of pencil where it said for weak. Also, there is a slight blemish there. Yeah, just blethering now. More fiddling and fettling with Emily Cat. So you can see I've repaired the split arrow and I've padded out the knocking point with a bit of fine linen thread. But if we look at where the arrow sits on the handle of the bow, it sits a bit near this back edge. So I want to relieve that point and get it so it touches just in the centre or just slightly nearer the back, and get that nice curved face, just to try and make it, you know, smoother, because the further back the contact point is, then the more the arrow is pointing upwards, in this case I mean sideways, and having to flex around the bow. So theoretically then, as far near the back, as close to the back of the bow as possible, but I just like to get it just say 3/4 of the way across, just nicely rounded. But it's this fine attention to detail that is easy to miss, especially in a mass-produced bow. But it only takes a couple of minutes to adjust anyway. The other thing to do is, if you just roughen up the arrow pass very slightly, then you'll soon see the wear point of where the arrow is actually kissing the side of the bow. Of course, it will depend slightly on the tune of the arrow and the rest of it. I tend to make my bows so they'll all shoot this regular 5/16 100 grain point sort of shaft. But I think arrow tuning is often overstated. I think the most important thing is all your arrows are as close to the same as possible. So if you've got reasonably matched shafts, your arrows will be okay. Because if they all kick left a bit, fine, you'll automatically compensate and aim right. Different kettle of fish for target archers, but I'm not a target archer. If you're shooting at something at an unknown distance anyway, as long as you've got an idea of the flight of your arrow, you should be okay. Alright, I've relieved that area considerably, and I've put a load of chalk on it. So I'll shoot an arrow through there and we'll see where it's actually wearing on the bow. Right, so we'll see if we can see where the arrow's touching on that arrow pass now. Now if I get the light right. Doesn't show up very well, but you can see it's actually there, which is, yeah, it's like I said, a little bit nearer the back than centre, just a whisker. Now you might say, well, that's not going to make a lot of difference. Well, no, it's not going to make a lot of difference, but it's not going to make it any worse. And the time it took was barely a minute or so. And yeah, people are willing to spend a lot of time trying to match arrows and worrying about spine and Lord knows what. Whereas sometimes just tuning up the bow achieves as much or more. Oh, that shows it nicely, doesn't it? You can definitely see where it was striking there. So yeah, I mean, that's not smoothed off. I just did that with me bastard file, mainly because I knew that rough surface would hold the chalk, which would then show the mark. So anyhow, there you go. Another bit of Uncle Dell's fiddling and fettling. Oh, one last thing. There it is, side by side with Twister, my regular field bow. So you can see it's that whisker shorter. The upper limb is relatively shorter. The grips are in a similar place. So the upper limb shorter is the same as saying the lower limb is relatively longer. You can see it's a little bit wider. That's quite a nice shot, isn't it? There we are.